Welcome to Life Source Church. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or SoundCloud.
Welcome to our Friday edition of MoneyWorks Podcast. It was our intention to have for you today one of our families talking about how God taught them about giving and tithing. And unfortunately, that wasn't able to happen this week. We plan to be back on that schedule again next week. But I do have two awesome videos to show you that they'll be all included in this one video. The first is that's from Calvary Fellowship in Miramar, Florida. Couples from their church talking about tithing and giving, how they learned to do that, how God taught them to do that. They speak of the struggles as well as how God worked. And that's followed up by about a 6-minute long video by Rick Warren, the author of The Purpose-Driven Life. He spoke at a Christian Leadership Conference in 2013, and he talked about the importance of learning to give and being generous with our money because of what God will do in our lives through it. So it's about 10 minutes long, the combination of these two, and I really encourage you to spend the time to either watch or to listen, and I think you'll really be encouraged about the fact that we can trust God in this area of our life. So God bless you. Have a great Friday. Enjoy these videos and be encouraged by them.
Well, I started tithing pretty much when I was old enough to have money. And I started tithing. The reason why is because it was a commandment that God, commands us to do. It's kind of like a way to honor Him and show Him that we're loyal to Him and that we love Him. And it kind of puts Him as a priority in our lives.
I did not start tithing at a young age. In fact, for me it was the complete opposite. When Sarvi and I got married, we were church hopping, looking for a place to call home. And every time the bucket would pass, I would turn to her and say, "Don't you dare put a nickel in there."
We had anxieties about tithing, I think, right after we got married, and we were a young couple just kind of getting started. And for the first time, the entire financial burden of our livelihood fell on us.
I do remember, there being times when I'm looking at the checkbook and I'm thinking, oh gosh, like this is going to get us pretty close to the line, but God's always been faithful to us. We need to be faithful to Him.
When we first decided to tithe, well, that was quite a while ago. We were giving every once in a while when we could. Then we started thinking, what if God gave to us every once in a while when He felt like it as well? And at that point, we realized, something. If we're going to do it, let's do it right.
So there was some anxiety at the beginning, but the whole purpose of tithing, we believe, is to just grow in your faith and in trust with God. So it was something that we always stuck to and committed to, and always saw, God always carry us through a lot of tough times.
To me, it just doesn't make sense not to tithe, because everything we have comes from God, and He tells us in the Bible that He wants us to tithe. So why would we, if we're afraid, okay, if we tithe, we're not going to have enough, that's so silly, because God's the one that controls whether we have enough or not.
We look at our income and we think our income is 100% ours, and it really isn't. It's 100% His. So who are we to withhold 10%? It's funny because, as you go through the Bible has over 2,000 verses specifically on money, but 500 on prayer. You see? So we've got so much in the Bible about money, but we don't live by the Bible when it comes to money.
On a personal level, I've never met anyone that has regretted making the decision to tithe. I've seen plenty of people struggling, wondering why, they're struggling financially or why they're going through certain situations, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that they just refuse to let go of that part of their life.
What I would say to someone who is thinking about tithing and isn't sure, in the Bible it says over and over, do not test your God, except one instance. And God says, you can test me in this one thing. If you tithe, I will show my faithfulness back to you. So I'd say to someone who's thinking about it, God actually says, test me on this. And He never says that for anything else.
If anyone's on the fence about tithing, I would say, if you're not on the fence about whether or not you want to be a follower of Christ, then you shouldn't be on the fence about tithing. It's pretty much a black and white issue.
I would say, well, first of all, if you're thinking about it, there's a reason why you're thinking about it. Maybe you think you should do it, but there's something else holding you back, and questions what is that thing. And then second of all, I would say try it. Allow God to work the miracle in your life. Since we've been tithing regularly, we haven't had really any serious financial worries at all. And you would think it would be the converse because you're actually giving. But the more we give, the more we receive. So I would just say try it out. Allow God, allow others to be the miracle in your life.
Now, the antidote to the lust of the eyes is generosity. Learning to be generous is the only antidote to the lust of the eyes. And I want to challenge you and your wife to make a decision to become more generous every year of your life. Kay and I made this decision 38 years ago. When we got married, we said each year we're going to raise our tithe. So the first year of marriage, we tithe 10%. Why? Because God says, you give me 10%. For the end of our first year of marriage, we raised our tithe to 11%. The end of our second year, we raised our tithe to 12%. The third year, we raised our tithe 3%. And each year, we would raise it a little bit more. And on years when the cupboard was bare and we were barely making ends meet, we would only raise our giving maybe 0.25%. But we wanted to be more generous every year than the year before. And on years I'd get a raise or have a windfall or something, we'd raise it 4 or 5%. Now, we weren't doing this to show off because I didn't tell anybody for 30 years. But we kept raising it this last year, we raised it another percent, from 90 to 91%. I've been playing this game with God for 38 years. God says, Rick, you give to me, and I'll give to you, and we'll see who wins. I have lost that game every year for 38 years. I dare you to trust God. I dare you to trust God with your money. You trust Him with your salvation, you don't even trust Him to tithe? Who are you kidding? If you don't trust Him with your money, you don't trust Him. The Bible says, if you are not faithful with unrighteous mammon, who will give you the true riches of God? Do you know why God chose me to write the best-selling book in American history? Because He knew what I'd do with the money. You say, well, man, if I made millions of dollars, I'd give it all away to... No, you wouldn't, because you're not giving away now. I had a track record of 38 years of generosity when I couldn't afford it. And God knew it. He knew He could trust I had a 38-year track record. Faithful in little, faithful in much. And so this lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, the only antidote. You see, every time I give, my heart grows bigger. Every time I give, I break the grip of materialism in my life. And every time I give, I become more like Jesus. And I want to be like Jesus. God so loved the world that He gave. You can give without loving, but you cannot love without giving. I say without fear of contradiction that Saddleback Church is the most generous church in America, bar none. Name any church. Saddleback Church is, bar none, the most generous church in America. Why? Because I've modeled it for them. I remember the year there was a tsunami in Southeast Asia. We don't do fundraisers. We just teach spiritual giving as a discipline. I remember I stood up on a Sunday morning and said, guys, yesterday there was a hurricane, a tsunami in Southeast Asia. We need to help these people. And in less than a 15-second ask, our people gave $1.6 million to help the tsunami. 4 months later, we had a capital thing where they gave 40 million. 4 months after that, 9 months after the tsunami, Katrina hit. There were 6,800 churches in my network, purpose-driven network, that were hit by Katrina. 400 of our churches lost their buildings in Katrina. Most of them small, rural, African-American churches. I said, guys, I stood up on Sunday, guys, we got to help these churches. They're our family. And 9 months after they'd given 1.6 million for the for the tsunami, they gave 1.7 million for Katrina. You know what we did? I went to those pastors, said, you've lost your members, you've lost your church, you've lost your own home. The members have moved to Memphis or Houston, but I need you to stay there and rebuild the city. And we paid the salary of 400 pastors for a year to keep them there. I didn't pay it, the people did. Why? Because we have learned the blessing of generosity. Now, hear me out. I don't give to get a blessing. I get blessed, but I don't give to get a blessing. I give to be a blessing. So the antidote to the lust of the flesh is integrity, and the antidote to the lust of the eyes is generosity. It is the only way. Don't tell me you're not a materialist if you're not generous. If you want to know what really matters to you, let me see your checkbook stubs and your calendar. Because the way you spend your time and the way you spend your money tells me what's really important to you. If you spend more money on video games or Starbucks than you do on the things of the Lord, you got a problem.
Life Source Church, providing a genuine opportunity to know Christ.